Yeah, the Maccabean Revolt broke out in 167 BC, and it's often portrayed as the Jews versus the Greeks. And to some extent, yes, it was, but underlying that really was a battle within Judaism itself for control of the nature of Judaism. So the Seleucid Greeks who were based in Syria, they ruled quite a large kingdom, which extended from parts of what's today Turkey through Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, Iran, those areas. And they also, in 198 BC, conquered the regions of Samaria and Judea, and they became part of the Seleucid kingdom. Initially, the Jews were given freedom to cultural freedom to have their own laws as their cultural standard. They didn't need to follow the laws that all the other peoples in the Seleucid kingdom followed. They were able to follow Torah, and this was given legal status by the Seleucid king. And that enabled the Jews to flourish. And uh, they started to discuss, well, what is Judaism, and what's the nature of it? How do we keep the law? And what exactly are the things that we should and should not be doing? But this is happening in a time when everyone wants to be Greek, and Greek ideas, Greek culture, Greek religion is infusing everything, and Judaism is not immune to it. And Greek culture and Greek philosophy um, permeates Judaism. It soaks into Judaism and provides a lot of good things. As I mentioned earlier, it provides the Jews with some excellent categories for thinking about their own faith. I would argue that apocalyptic thinking really is just Platonic philosophy that has come into Judaism, and they adapt those kind of categories to a Jewish way of thinking. And
That's
lo
great.
and behold, we have apocalyptic thinking, this idea that there is another spiritual reality that
Mm,
influences and controls what's going on in the mundane world in which we all live. But the freedom that the Seleucids give to the Jews enables the flourishing of many different ideas. And at this stage, the priests are the ones who are in control of Judaism. But you've got some groups who are saying we need to move more in an international direction, a liberal direction that involves more Greek culture. We can see elements of compatibilism between Jewish religion and Greek religion. And a lot of people were saying Yahweh and Zeus, they're the same thing. And there are others who are saying, oh, no, that's absolutely impossible. They are definitely not the same thing. And so we also see a conservative and even reactionary movement as well. And when the change to Seleucid rule happened, we had the high priest Simon II. He kind of occupied the middle ground, and he kind of kept everyone in check. But once he died, um, the the extremes in Judaism just kept pulling in opposite directions. And eventually, the Seleucid Greeks, uh, the king at the time in 167 BC was Antiochus IV, who really was a nasty piece of work. I'd describe him as a narcissist of the highest
yeah, right.
category. And he had tried to invade Egypt and attach it to his kingdom, and the Romans stopped him in a very humiliating move. And so he basically went home and kicked the dog in Jerusalem, and decreed that the Jews could no longer have their independence to worship and have worship in their own way and have their culture run by Torah. He removed that special ethnic status and said, "You Jews, you're now just like all other peoples in the Seleucid kingdom." And the result of that was the temple in Jerusalem could no longer be the temple of Yahweh.
Mm,
It was rebadged as the temple of Olympian Zeus, and anyone could now come and worship in that temple in any way that they saw fit, according to the Greek custom, which generally involved the sacrifice of pigs, which is absolute anathema according to Torah. And so this is what occurred. There were massacres that happened in 167 BC as people were, reacting against, all this kind of stuff. And eventually, the conservatives fled Jerusalem, fled for their lives. And that left Jerusalem in the hands of very progressive liberals who were embracing Greek culture. And so there was a battle just for the conservatives in Judaism to survive. And the ones who, there were two essential ways that people responded. One was what I would call the biblical way, the kind of Daniel way, which is you maintain your adherence to Torah, even though that has now become illegal. You maintain your adherence to Torah, and if it costs you your life, so be it. You maintain your faithfulness to God through observing Torah, even to the death. And so that was one way of responding, and a lot of people were martyred during this time because they refused to give up a culture of Torah. But then there were those who were not prepared to give up their lives. And these were the people who didn't really believe in life after death or the concept of resurrection. And that was mainly the priests. And so there were conservative priests, the five brothers, the Maccabee brothers, who were led initially by the brother Judas Maccabeus. Maccabee in Hebrew just means the hammer. So Judas's code name was Judas the Hammer. And all his other brothers also had code names. Really cool, actually. But they were not prepared to give up their lives. Their entire hope was situated in the here and now, and they were not prepared to go down quietly. So they started to pick up the sword and to do battle against the Seleucid authorities, but also against their fellow compatriots, their fellow Jews, whom they viewed as progressive and liberal, who had sold out the nation. And so a revolt occurs that is led by the Maccabees. And initially, it's just a nuisance to the Seleucids. These guys are fighting a guerrilla war up in the mountains, but Judas Maccabeus is really successful. And eventually he manages to gain a lot of adherents, a lot of people fighting with him, the Maccabean resistance fighters. And they challenge the Seleucid authorities, but they're still a small-time operation. And in 164 BC, we get to November 164 BC, and the Seleucids realize, right, we need to stamp these guys out. And they send a massive force. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like the Maccabees are going down. This is their last stand. Until they find out that the Seleucid king Antiochus IV is dead in another country, somewhere else in the empire. He's just contracted a disease, and a few days later, he's dead. And as soon as that happens, suddenly the Seleucid army that is about to beat the Maccabees, they just pack up and go home. And so the Maccabees managed to go and capture part of Jerusalem. It's a common misconception that in 164 BC, they managed to recapture Jerusalem and gain independence for the Jews. They didn't quite do that. Jerusalem was a divided city for quite a long time. And the struggle continues against the Seleucids for the next 25 years, or the 20 years or so. 25 years. And there's a lot of toing and froing, and most of the Maccabee brothers end up dying at the hands of the Seleucids. And the last one remaining is Simon. And eventually he manages to play off, and the second last brother, also Jonathan, he manages to play off the Seleucids, who start descending into civil war. He plays off the people of the claimants to the Seleucid throne off each other, and they end up with their own Jewish state as a result of it. And they manage to get their independence in 142 BC. The festival of Hanukkah, which is still celebrated by many Jews today, is the commemoration of the Maccabees' recovery of the temple in 164 BC. And the rededication of the temple. They had to dismantle the altar, which had been polluted with pig sacrifice, rededicate the temple, follow all procedures in Torah. And there is the legend that they didn't have enough oil to keep all the lamps burning in the temple throughout the period of dedication, the 8 days of dedication. But miraculously, the oil never burnt out. And so the flame of the candelabra in the temple kept burning for the entire 8 days. And so that's what is remembered at Hanukkah. The word Hanukkah just means rededication.